Hey guys, welcome back. This is part 2 of Eternal Masters draft review of the specific archetypes that are in Eternal Masters. Like I said in the last video, and like I'll probably say in all the others, drafting for synergy, drafting for consistency is probably the best way to go into your draft pod and 3 or 4-0 it. While people are trying out 5-color decks or they're forcing all their rares, all their value cards into the same deck, if you can draft a consistent, reliable deck, you'll be able to push past those guys while they're mana screwed or looking for their splash colors, so on and so forth, while they're dirtling around with weird strategies. So I picked red, white, and blue, green for this video. And I paired them together for a reason, and that's because I'm not 100% sure what the strategies are for these two. I think I've got red-white pretty nailed down, but blue-green seems like a mess, and I think that's just the nature of blue-green. It's always just like card advantage in creatures, basically, and it doesn't look too different here, but I'll get into that when I get into it. But you'll notice specifically when I get to the slides about the rares that support these archetypes, there won't be very many in this video because there aren't a lot of rares geared towards the strategies that these color combinations make. So keep that in mind, that there's less of a payoff for playing these colors because there are less rares that fit into the strategy. But the archetypes themselves seem pretty strong. So we're going to jump into it with red-white here, which is looking pretty sweet. It kind of reminds me of Khans of Tarkir red-white, where the archetype is to go wide, make tokens, and just have some huge attacks, bring your opponent from 20 to 0 like that. So you'll see some of the archetype staples here include cards like Intangible Virtue and Raise the Alarms. These are cards that both pay you off for having tokens and also create tokens, with Intangible Virtue being an incredible payoff for having lots of token generation. The type of card that you're tempted to take early and then draft around it, kind of like Always Watching from Shadows over Innistrad, if you're more familiar with that, but a little more powerful, I think, simply because tokens tend to be spread out more and you tend to get more tokens than you would normal creatures, so it's it's comparable at the least. I don't know if I'm going to go out and say 100% that it's more powerful than Always Watching, but it's definitely strong, and Always Watching is a strong card too. But you also get payoff cards in cards like Flamekin Zella, a card that you're probably not going to play in any other color combination besides red-white. Not the type of card you normally splash in other colors. So you get paid off with these multicolor cards that pump your entire team, and you'll see one of the things I mention in one of the next couple slides is that this strategy seems to win by making a mass of creatures and then pumping them all to push in massive amounts of damage. Think Trumpet Blast from Khans of Tarkir, where you could just make a bunch of tokens, make little goblins, 1/1s, and then play something like Trumpet Blast, give them all +2 for the turn, and then suddenly you won the game. So I'm kind of getting the same vibe here. But what you should be prioritizing, first off, if you're going to play token strategy or you're going to go wide with your creatures, you need the cards that actually enable that. And thankfully, looking through the list of red and white commons and uncommons, there's a good number of cards that do this. Cards like Mog War Marshal and Beetleback Chief are very solid cards on their own, but you get even better when you're add in these kind of universal effects like Intangible Virtue, or you'll see on the other side the cards that pair very well with these token generation. So token generation is a thing, and I like that it's not centered in green-white. Usually green-white is the combination that gets token generation. It definitely was in Modern Masters 2. It was in M15. So we're kind of pushing tokens in the direction of red-white instead of green-white, and I like that quite a bit. You also have cards like Squadron Hawk, and I think there's a card in this set called Avarax that's very kind of similar. It lets you search up cards of the same name, basically. But Squadron Hawk lets you go wide quite a bit, and let me be one to tell you that Squadron Hawk is a deceivingly good card if you can get multiples of it. So if you're in on the Squadron Hawk, go all in on them. Pick them every time you see them, because they're actually insane in this sort of deck. But anyway, on the one hand, you have your token generators, you have your go-wide creatures, kind of creatures that are a little unimpressive on their own. or need a little bit of backing up, I should say, to really reach their full potential, because they're actually decent cards on their own. Remand that statement for me. Draw a card. On the other hand, you're going to need the payoff cards in the form of these mass pump spells. The kind of exception here is Battle Squadron, which I don't know what you would call this type of card, but it has power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control, and it flies. So 5 mana, potentially, 5/5 or bigger, including itself. Very, very strong creature in a token-based deck. But you also have cards like Orcish Oriflame, a card I'd never actually seen before the Eternal Master spoilers, where normally you wouldn't play this card in an average deck, but if your goal is to spread damage out among a bunch of different creatures, this enchantment can definitely do it for you. And I think maybe the strongest payoff outside of the gold color Flamekin Zealot is Rally the Peasants. This is another deceptively powerful card that I think used to be an uncommon, and now it's been pushed down to a common, which is absolutely insane. But it's basically a better Trumpet Blast, a much better Trumpet Blast, giving all of your creatures +2/+0, and then being able to flashback for the same cost. So +2/+0 for one card over the course of 2 different turns is usually enough to win the game if you've generated enough tokens and your opponent is behind on board state. Rally the Peasants is very, very strong, and is probably the go-to card to try and push in the damage with this sort of deck, or at least I think it is. Also, the reason something like Rally the Peasants is great is because a lot of people are going to go into this set not really having a full picture of every single card that's in it. It usually takes a couple drafts before you get used to like the combat tricks or what your opponent can have. So a lot of times your opponent may not be blocking your tokens, or they'll let you through and then they've set you up to really take advantage of a card like Rally the Peasants. Orcish Oriflame, something like that, is a little more obvious because they see it coming, but they may not think about Rally when you're attacking with all these tokens, and you may just be able to steal wins with a card like that. But there are a lot of cards that do this, a lot of token generation, a lot of cards that pay you off for it. So I think this is a solid strategy. I'm not entirely sure this is what Red-White's supposed to be doing, but it definitely feels like it if Flamekin Zealot is any sort of indication of that. Now, here's what I mentioned is that the rares, you'll notice there are only 2 cards here. This isn't to say that there aren't good white rares, there aren't good red rares, but these are the only 2 that really stood out to me as cards that fit the strategy of red-white. Goblin Trenches, another card I've never played with, but it looks insane. It looks like the type of card that you can go all in on it and completely like win a game out of nowhere. It lets you make tons and tons of tokens with your lands and kind of go for an all-in attack. So I think Goblin Trenches is the type of card you're not going to first pick, but if you're red-white, you'll be rewarded with it because, again, nobody else wants that card. Only the red-white players are going to want that card. And it's the type of card you can really get rewarded for if you're in the correct colors. Siege Gang Commander, on the other hand, is just a solid red card. So any red player is probably going to snatch it up. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough, but Siege Gang Commander, like I was saying, it's a solid card, so I wouldn't expect to see it get passed very much. If you do see it passed, it's a pretty good sign that red is open, and you should be moving in on it because it is a very powerful card. Think Pia and Kira Noir, maybe better, maybe worse, I don't know. Take your pick on it, but very, very strong card and fits the strategy well. It actually puts 4 bodies into play, lets you do some shenanigans with goblins, and works very well with this go wide strategy. Plus a big beater on its own. It's just a solid card without any extra help. So red-white looking pretty sweet. I do really love token-based strategies, and I will keep just remind everybody that Modern Masters 2, the strongest deck in Modern Masters 2 was green-white, just this token generation deck that used cards like Fortify to push in the damage, a +2/+0 instant or something like that, and that's very similar to what we have here. There's a bit of a different dynamic, and it is in 2 different colors, but I think token generation is a very strong thing that a lot of decks can't seem to deal with if you draft the right deck, and red-white might just be for you if that's your thing. Moving on to blue-green, this is the most confusing archetype for me, and I'm not entirely sure. I will be honest, I had to look up a little bit of help on this one. Apparently the archetype is supposed to be Threshold, but there aren't actually that many Threshold cards. There's like 5, which doesn't make a full archetype for me, or at least not compared to some of the other archetypes I've looked at. So I'm thinking the full archetype here is something like taking advantage of the graveyard, not just threshold, but having abilities from the graveyard or making your creatures more relevant when certain things are in your graveyard. So you see I've got Brawn here as an archetype staple, and this could have just as easily been Wonder or something like that, but cards that do something from the graveyard. You can include flashback cards here too, which I'll talk about in a second. So there's a weird combination of you see Nimble Mongoose here as a payoff card for having this sort of deck. You see Merfolk Looter as an enabler, a card that lets you get certain things into the graveyard, fueling both Threshold and the third type of card, which is cards like Brawn, where you can actually take advantage of them from the graveyard. So it's a weird kind of interaction, and I'm not even entirely sure this is the best thing to do with blue-green, because you'll see in a second, the rares just kind of point at like card advantage, drawing a bunch of cards and playing green creatures. You see this in Magic Origins too, where blue-green had Bounding Krasis as its gold-colored card, which doesn't really tell you too much about what the color is supposed to be doing. It's just solid creatures. Not to say that it's bad. Blue-green is typically pretty strong in most draft formats, simply because it's tempo plus the beatdown, which goes very well together. But help me out on this one. Tell me what you think blue-green's supposed to be doing and the best way to draft it, because I'm not entirely sure at this moment. But anyway, like I said, you've got kind of these 3 different areas. You've got Threshold, and there are some good Threshold creatures. Just because there aren't a lot of them doesn't mean the ones that aren't there aren't good. And or I'm sorry, the ones that are there aren't good. Excuse me. Cards like Werebear, Centaur Chieftain, there's a couple others. Nimble Mongoose is a very notable card. They're very, very strong. They're the type of cards that have early game advantage, especially Werebear. And then they just become very relevant in the late game too. So Werebear's your little tapper that becomes, a 4/4. And the faster you can get 7 cards in your graveyard, the more relevant they become earlier in the game. You'll also have the graveyard payoffs that actually work from the graveyard. Cards like Wonder, and Wonder is one of my personal favorite cards just because it can win you games. Giving all your creatures flying is no joke. Wonder is probably better than Brawn. In fact, I would say 100% Wonder is better than Brawn in nearly every circumstance, but I'll leave you to decide which one you like better. There you go. Let's take a poll. Which incarnation is better, Wonder or Brawn? My vote is for Wonder, so I'm 1-0 right now. At any rate, Roar of the Worm is another good example. A card that you can cast it, and then it has relevance from the graveyard, or if you're using it with the self-mill, which I've got here noted on the side, it becomes a little bit better, or a little bit more relevant early in the game, I should say, not necessarily better. Being able to flashback a 4-mana 6/6 very early in the game can win you a lot of games. And these kind of cards work very hand-in-hand with self-mill strategies. I think Screeching Scab is included because of Threshold. I can't think of any other reason why you would include this card. It's definitely not exciting. I don't recall seeing it in any Legacy or EDH decks, but correct me if I'm wrong. Please leave a comment linking me to any EDH or Legacy deck that has ever used Screech and Scab, and I will personally apologize. But at any rate, self-mill, getting cards into the graveyard. Fact or Fiction, another good way to do that with a solid card. But yeah, the combination of payoff, enablers, and I don't even know what you call the middle ground. I guess they're more payoff cards, but graveyard shenanigans in blue-green. Also very nice little color change. Not technically something you see in blue-green very often, so pretty happy to see it here. And then the rares, I was kind of scrapping here because there aren't very many rares that do anything relevant to a strategy. They're just good rares. You have cards like Omnis the Omnipotent, or I'm sorry, Arcanus the Omnipotent, and big green fatties and stuff like that. And those cards are great. I'm going to play them in my blue-green deck, but they're not necessarily cards that are making my strategy better. So Shardless Agent is here not because it fuels the strategy, but because it's a solid card that you're going to play in your blue-green deck, and I don't think you're ever getting past a Shardless Agent, again, because of value drafting, but it's the type of card that if you're blue-green, you're probably the only person who's going to play it, it's not really the type of card I would splash for. So we'll see about that one. And Natural Order here kind of fits the deck. It lets you sacrifice something, maybe a card, one of your incarnation cards, or maybe some threshold creature or something like that has relevance from the graveyard, and then you get to go search out something even bigger and badder. But this is really all I could find as far as cards that really pay you off for playing blue-green, not necessarily cards that are just solid blue creatures or solid green spells or anything like that. So, I'll be honest, I kind of wanted to knock these two colors out because they're the ones I'm least sure of. So, that is why I love comments, because you can help me out. You can actually tell me what you're thinking, and blue-green is the one that I need your help on the most. I'll be honest, I like drafting blue-green in most draft sets, so if you could help me figure out what the heck I'm supposed to be doing with these cards, that would be wonderful. I'm pretty confident red-white is supposed to be a token deck, and I'm pretty confident it'll be pretty strong, but let me know what you think of the two colors combinations in this video, and I will be back looking at Rakdos and Selesnya in the next set, which I'm pretty excited about. Black-red. I'll have to take a second look at white-green, but let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of any of the cards in Eternal Masters. Let me know what you think of Wonder and Brawn, the age-old question, which one is better. Remember, Wonder is currently up 1-0. At any rate, thank you for watching. My name is Timothy. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you soon for the third episode of this series. Alright, catch you later, guys.